There are so many layers to this story that it's always hard to know where to begin. We could begin with the woman herself, what we know about her and what we don't know about her. We could begin with women in general in the first century culture. We could begin with the Jews and the Samaritans and the long-standing enmity between the two and how this plays into the story. Or why Jesus chose to go through Samaria on his way back to Judea from Galilee instead of going an extra day's journey, as most Jews would have done, to avoid going through Samaria. And we'll get to all of that in good time. But this morning, I want to begin with water. Water, water everywhere. To us, it is a common, ordinary stuff of life, part of our everyday living. We drink it, we cook with it, we wash with it, water the lawn, swim in it, and waste it. Especially in this country and other parts of the world where clean running water isn't a luxury and where it is simply taken for granted, as in turning on the faucet in the morning and expecting clean water to pour forth. Only a few years ago now, the International Water Management Institute reported that 1 person out of every 3 on the planet today lacks reliable access to fresh water, whether because the water is unsafe, unaffordable, or unavailable. At about the same time, the World Health Organization reported that 3.4 million people die every year from water-related disease. 6,000 children under the age of 5 die every day because of unsafe water and poor or inadequate sanitation. When these statistics were first reported, that meant that there were more children dying from dirty water than from HIV/AIDS, malaria, war, and accidents all put together. Water-related diseases are the single largest cause of human sickness and health-related death in the world. And while we might hope that these statistics have improved, the improvement is probably minimal, given the increasing evidence of climate change and the challenges of food security and water safety. Now, none of that is surprising, given that about 2/3 of our body mass is composed of water. We can live without food for about a month. We can only live for about 4 days without water. Water covers about 70% of the Earth's surface. The oceans contain about 97% of the Earth's water, and if you go to a reliable textbook or an online resource, you can find volumes of information about water, including the chemical and physical properties of water, the effects of water on human civilization, the politics, religion, and philosophy of water. Millions of people, mostly women and children, walk millions of miles every day to get water and carry it back home. It's estimated that worldwide, if you added it all up, somewhere between 150 and 200 million hours a day are spent collecting water. Time that could be spent in school, or caring for families, or contributing to the economy in other ways. And the next day, those women and children do it all over again. And the next day, and the next day, and the next. In today's story, the Samaritan woman, like every other woman of her day, has come to the well to get water, probably to drink and cook and wash with. Like everybody else, she has come for the one thing she cannot live without. She has probably come with a sizable water jar balanced on her head, and she has come out from the city to a place that has been identified as Jacob's well. Now, the well is still there today, but there is no evidence aside from tradition that it was dug by Jacob or dates to the time of Jacob. But according to the Interpreter's Dictionary, the well is now about 75 feet deep, partly filled with debris. It is so deep that the water never rises to the top. It's about 8 feet in diameter. It narrows toward the top. It's covered with a large stone with a hole in it. The upper portion of the well is lined with masonry, but the lower portion is cut into the limestone. It is both a cistern and a spring, as it appears to be fed by both surface water and underground sources. Unlike other women of her day, the women in the city where she lives, this woman has come to the well at high noon, the hottest part of the day, and she has come alone. And both of those things are very telling. Water was usually drawn early in the morning or in the evening when it was cool. Unless they were desperate, women didn't come to the well at midday. The well was the place that women gathered to visit and to laugh and to talk about their children and their husbands. The social aspects of coming to the well were as important as the water itself. It was the one time of day when they could relax and be with other women. But this woman has learned that coming to the well with the other women has only brought humiliation and pain. She wasn't included in the conversation. She was excluded. There were whispers and stares, and when she came near, backs were turned on her. She was clearly on the outside. She was marginalized from the circle of friends that she would have logically belonged to. Now, there has been endless speculation about this Samaritan woman, whether she was reputable or not, whether she was an outcast or not, and most of it has been based on her admission that she has had 5 husbands, and that the man she's living with now is not her husband. That's one thing we know about her, but there's a lot that we don't know about her. For example, we don't know why she's had 5 husbands. Given that it was impossible for a woman to obtain a divorce, it can't be that. She might have been caught in that levirate requirement of Jewish law that said widows were simply passed to the next oldest brother, and maybe the 6th one refused to marry her. Maybe she was beaten or abused or abandoned. Writing about this passage, one preacher said maybe life was a living hell for her. Who knows? None of us knows what kind of blows another person has taken or what kind of scars she bears in order to survive. We may be quick to wag the tongue or point the finger or pass the gossip, but the truth is we don't know. Here's something else we do know. It would have been very unusual for a Jewish man to have spoken to a woman, especially a Samaritan woman. The chasm between the Samaritans and the Jews could be traced back centuries to the Assyrian occupation, when the Jews intermarried with their captors and lost their religious and racial purity. And the current dispute had to do with the proper place of worship. It would have been even more unusual for Jesus as a rabbi to have spoken to a woman in public. One group of pious men in those days was known to close their eyes when they saw a woman on the street. They were called the bruised and bleeding Pharisees because they kept their eyes closed for so long that they stumbled into walls. These were the same men who prayed every morning, "Thank God I was not born a woman." But Jesus' eyes are wide open when he encounters this Samaritan woman and says, "Give me a drink," thus breaking down barriers and breaking through boundaries that had been in place for centuries, and beginning the longest conversation between Jesus and any other person anywhere in the Gospels, longer than any conversation with his disciples or his accusers or his family. She is unable to simply give him a drink because it violates all the customs and traditions by which she structures her life. And so she comes right back with, "How is it that you, a Jew, ask a drink of me, a woman of Samaria?" All those years of being pushed aside have made her a little suspicious of his offer, but they've also given her a backbone, and she doesn't shy away from the conversation. And from that point, it takes off and meanders through her allegedly shady past, her present marital status, or lack thereof, the proper place for worship, the coming of the one who will be called Messiah, and ends with Jesus telling someone for the first time that he is the one they have been waiting for. And how interesting that it should be a Samaritan woman who gets the news. Interesting, but maybe not surprising. After all, when you think about the beginning of the conversation, when Jesus offers her living water, she responds, "Sir, give me this water, so that I may never be thirsty or have to keep coming here to draw water." Along with everything else, underneath all the layers, this is a story about thirst. Not simply physical thirst, but deep spiritual thirst. In many ways, we are just like the Samaritan woman. We are reluctant to come to the well because we might not be welcome. We have so many questions. We are suspicious of what is offered. We aren't sure about accepting the gift. There must be strings attached. You don't get something for nothing. When we hear Jesus say, "I can give you living water, I can change your life, I can make things different," it threatens to dismantle all of the traditions and cultural biases around which we structure our lives. Change is threatening and scary. We prefer to drink from the wells that we know, even though we come away thirsty, even when the water threatens to poison our lives instead of nourishing our souls. We drink from the well of success and economic well-being, and we forget to offer a drink to our fellow travelers. We drink from the well of self-interest and wonder why we are so spiritually empty. We continue to drink from wells that keep us thirsting for more, and yet we drag our feet when invited to the well that provides living water. There is salvation in the gift of living water, but the decision to accept it is ours alone. In accepting the gift of living water, we have to be willing to give up our reliance on all of those other wells. We have to be able to let go of whatever is keeping us from relationship with God by looking long and hard at the choices we make and breaking down the walls that keep us from coming to the well and drawing living water. One of the reasons I wanted to preach this text one last time was to remind us that the story is overflowing with transforming grace. And perhaps we understand it most clearly when the Samaritan woman puts down her water jar and goes into the city. It reminds us that we can't carry living water in the same sad, broken, leaky water jar that has carried failures and betrayals and addictions and pain and shame and sorrow. We can't carry living water in the same old water jar of anger and bitterness and despair that we've been dragging around forever. If we're going to carry living water, we have to put down the old water jar and move into a new life when transforming grace is present, whether we're not quite sure we're ready for it or not. Let's take that just one step further. We as a congregation cannot continue or hope to carry water the same way we did 20 or 30 years ago, even 10 years ago. Those old water jars are worn out. We need to pick up new water jars if we're going to move into a different future. All the water jars I've been carrying around for 20 years of interim ministry are going to have to go into the trash or be responsibly recycled, because in very short order, that's not who I will be. Likewise, all the water jars that you've been carrying around, waiting for a new chapter to begin, have to be put down or thrown out, because that's not who you are anymore. And if you aren't able to set them aside, if you aren't able to open yourselves to even the possibility of picking up some new water jars, nothing will change. Trust me, nothing will change. And I don't think that's where you want to be right now. Every day we have a choice. We can pick up the same old water jars and start the day dragging around the same old stuff. Or we can put the old water jars down and start the day carrying living water that will fill our souls with hope and forgiveness and love and trust. But only you can make the choice. But you have to come to the well. Amen.